how does what we do go into a podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like away from where we are, and cooperating here with DNB.
Yep.
Like, how does that come about?
Christina, let me ask you a question. What is geothermal?
Well,
welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
welcome back to a new episode of The Switch, not another podcast. I hope you are as excited as I am today to listen into new, exciting and very informative discussions. Today we have a very special guest, and I'm pretty nervous because he's my boss. Let's take a closer look of who he is and what he's done.
He is in charge of Baseload Capital's investments and portfolio performance. He has great experience in international finance, as well as founding, operating, and running companies. He is motivated by working with companies that have a higher purpose, such as green transition and how to accelerate the green shift through new technologies, smart funding, and motivated teams. Let's give a warm Switch welcome to a real game changer in the field of renewables, Alexander Helling, CEO of Baseload Capital.
Welcome back to The Switch, not another podcast. Together with me in the studio today, I'm super happy to have my boss, Alexander Helling.
Thank you very much. I'm super happy and a bit nervous as well.
Yeah. Who is most nervous, you or me?
I don't know. Let's see.
Let's see. Listen, I just wanted to start off this podcast with telling the story about the podcast, because it's quite interesting. I was sitting at home in my sofa. It was Friday evening, and as usual, yours and mine, they never switch off. So we continue to have the discussions about how to make geothermal grand and what we should do. And you're starting to text me these Graham Norton clips. And I pop them up on the TV, and me and Marcus, we start watching it and we're laughing. And then, the conversation continues. And within 1.5 hours or something, I think somewhere there, it was a decision made. It was not open, it was not obvious, but it was a decision made that Baseload is going to make a podcast and it's going to be inspired by Graham Norton show.
Yeah.
We want to do something that entertains and educates, but in a fun way.
Yes.
Really, how does your mind work?
Now, well, I love Graham Norton, of course, but then,
Who doesn't?
What we're trying to do is to work on the energy transition. And I think, how do you get people interested in a subject that, it is super interesting for many people in the industry, but for a lot of regular people, they don't pay a lot of attention to it. So, how can you, tell people what we are working on and get them as excited as we are, and see the opportunities in how we can move away from fossil fuels into renewable energy. And I think that we have a lot of educating podcasts, but they are for a very narrow target group, and if we can make a more fun way of telling people how we can make a difference in this world, I think that we will reach a much larger audience and also get them excited again, them working on it. So we build a platform for people to join in and see all the opportunities.
Baseload Capital is a company that invests and develops within geothermal. How does what we do go into a podcast?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of away from where we are, and cooperating here with DNB.
Yep.
How does that come about?
Christina, let me ask you a question. What is geothermal?
Well, I know, but no one else knows.
Okay, so let's ask Jacob then.
Okay, Jacob, what is geothermal?
Geothermal. I think it's from the core of the Earth. Energy from the core of the Earth.
No, but that's good. So let me ask you another question, Jacob. So what is solar power?
It's power from the sun.
Exactly. So, I think when we started Baseload, the focus is geothermal, which is heat from the earth, and you're completely correct there. But it's also quite few people that understands, what is geothermal. It's a very old energy source, and it's been used produce electricity on Iceland, for example, for the last 60 years, but not many people know about it. So, if I would ask Emil then again, so which country on Earth do you think is best when it comes to geothermal?
It should be something with a lot of volcanoes and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
So probably Iceland or somewhere up north.
Exactly. So Iceland is a very good
My
example.
guys behind the scene. Yay!
Yeah, no, but
Jacob and Emil, hats off.
very, very good. No, and Iceland is a perfect example. They are, they've been developing geothermal electricity and heat for a very long period of time. What not many people know about is that Sweden is actually one of the top countries globally when it comes to geothermal, but then geothermal heat pumps. So it's not geothermal electricity, but it's still, utilizing the heat from the earth in order to provide then heat or cooling for homes and offices. And, it's the same concept. But what not many
So tell us about the concept, if people who are listening to this. So the concept is actually what?
So, you utilize heat from the earth to create heating or cooling. And if you have high enough heat, then you can produce electricity, which is then a base load power, comparable to nuclear energy or coal or oil, but, fully renewable. But you can also then utilize it to heat homes instead of, using electricity to heat homes or oil to heat homes or gas. So, it's a fantastic resource that I think too few people know about. And you and me also had a discussion, like you found a children's book and, they talk about the
Sun, wind,
exactly,
water.
But no one talks about geothermal.
Exactly.
Which we see is the biggest untapped potential to reduce CO2 globally, and also to be an alternative or a complement to other renewables by providing a stable baseload power in the net or in the grid.
So just for people out there, I mean, this is exactly what we're on to. So geothermal is then you're drilling down, and how much do you have to drill?
So it depends on where you are, but I think Sweden here is also a fantastic example. Like we started using heat pumps in the 70s and 80s, and then it was quite expensive. You drill 200 meters, 250 meters down, you have a closed loop and you heat your house with.
What does the closed loop is?
Well, so basically you use temperature differences underneath the surface in order to heat your house. So, it's a very simple system, and it was...
There's a pipe going down.
It's a pipe going down, and then you have another pipe inside, and then you have a temperature difference of maybe 10 degrees in the ground. And with that temperature difference, you can run a heat pump that heats your house.
Yeah.
Super simple. And, if you look at drilling 250 meters down in the 80s, then, you had to pay several 100,000 Swedish krona for that. Today, you can order a heat pump. They come, they drill the well in less than 1 day, install it, and all is finished. And for that, you pay 5,000-6,000 euros. So, it's super simple. And if you look at the electricity side, that's a little bit more complex. Here you need to have, a lot hotter water, and then you run a turbine on top and produce electricity. But it's the same. It's still the same concept that you use temperature differences and heat from the ground that heat up water that you then either use as steam or you use it to run a system that produces electricity.
So the system that we have in our homes to heat our homes, for example, and the systems in the power plants are similar.
Well, they use the same temperature difference in order to either generate heat, generate cooling, or generate electricity. With that said, it's very difficult here in Sweden to drill down and then produce electricity from that. But it's very easy to use it to produce heat for the houses, for example. While on Iceland, where you have very hot rock and a lot of water in that rock, then there's much easier to produce electricity. But it's still geothermal. But I think this is also why some people don't understand or have a hard time, just grasping geothermal compared to solar and wind, because solar, it's so clear. Like, you get electricity from the sun, from wind, you get electricity from the wind, while here you have a lot of different things that you can do with the same resource. And you can, both cooling, heating, electricity, you can combine them, and it's a bit more complex.
But in the complexity, isn't that the possibility though?
Yes. No, that's definitely the possibility.
So, in that case, if this is such an amazing thing, this geothermal, and it gives us so much, why isn't it bigger than it actually is today?
It is already big.
Okay.
So, people, and also us in the industry, we usually look at what we do. So if you look at how many houses in Sweden do you think use heat pumps?
Oh, good one. That's a tricky question. So now they're going to look good, but I don't have a clue.
Okay, so if I would tell you that a little bit more than 60% of all the households in Sweden actually uses geothermal to heat their houses today, would you say that is small or big?
I would say that that's much bigger than I think the average person expects.
Exactly. Now, so I would say that it's BS to say that we are not using it.
You can push it, it's okay.
I already pushed it. It's BS to say that we're not using it, because more than 60% of the villas here in Sweden, for example, are using it. But globally, very few are. So, I think that we are right in the transition now when gas prices are extremely high, where everyone, a lot of people want to see the energy transition happening. My guess is that that heat pumps, as they have grown in Sweden, will grow globally in a much larger scale the next decade. And if you come to geothermal electricity production, here traditionally you have built large-scale geothermal power plants, which means that you look for very, very high temperatures, 200 Celsius plus degrees. You take up steam and you run a steam turbine, similar to what you have in a coal-fire plant. But now with new technologies, you can produce electricity from lower temperatures, which means that now it's actually a very good time to start scaling this up. And this is happening, but it should be happening in a much larger scale.
So what would you say is needed to scale it up?
Well, we need a lot more capital, a lot more investors looking into this. We need them to be able to take development risk and exploration risk. So if you stop there, what would be the advantage for them if they would do this, if they would invest in geothermal? Well, that's easy. It's long-term stable baseload electricity production, which, when developed in the right way, can both be very profitable and good for the environment.
So both profitable for the investor, but as well good for the environment.
Yes.
So in that sense, so what does Baseload Capital do? What's the purpose of Baseload Capital?
So Baseload Capital was founded with the vision that by utilizing geothermal energy and creating a platform to deploy geothermal energy, we want to build a more resilient society and a planet in balance. So, we want to both invest and develop our projects, but we also want to be a good example for other investors and developers to move into this field, because it's such a a big opportunity that we need all technology providers, all investors, all developers to move into here, because that will drive down cost, it will drive down the complexity, it will drive down the risk, and it will allow us to build a better society.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
We're talking about investments and expending the capital in the like baseload, what do you call it, era. How long should the investments be? Do you get my question? How long could they, in return for a lot of investments, it's always about the
If you put in money now, when does the return come?
Yeah. Also, it's a very good question and very difficult to answer, because it depends on which market you are, etc., etc. But if you compare it to other power plants, for example, these are long-term investments, and usually the structure is that you go in, you build either your solar power plant, your wind power plant, or another power plant, and then you sell the electricity to a utility over a long contract. So that's the standard setup, and usually you're looking at payback times anywhere in between 4 to 5 years up to 15 years in some terms. But this is very standard in the electricity generating business. What you also have in geothermal that you don't have in the other ones is that you also can not only sell the electricity, but you can also sell the heat, for example. You can connect it to the district heating network, or you can use hot water or hot temperatures in order to produce cooling, which is also something that not many people know about.
So there is actually an ecosystem around geothermal. So one power plant can not only generate, for example, electricity in this case, it can also generate something more. What can it generate? Give me some examples.
No, so I'm going to give you an example from Iceland, which is a super interesting project, and it's being developed by a small municipality close to Reykjavik. And this small municipality, they have and are right now building a big industrial park. And this industrial park is going to mainly be fish farms, on-land fish farms, so that you can, you don't pollute the oceans. And then you're going to have data centers and some other things in it. But it's a big project. But here it's a full ecosystem. So the power to run all the electricity will be developed by geothermal electricity production. The waste heat or the water after you have produced the electricity, which is then approximately 80 degrees, will be used both for the district heating, but then also in order to heat the fish farms, so that you reduce the electricity, and you also improve the profitability of the fish farms. Then another very interesting part here is that you also can use that water in order to replace the water within the fish farms, so that you constantly
circulate.
You circulate, and by that you can minimize the amount of chemicals or minerals that you have to have in the water for the fish farm. So by combining the geothermal ecosystem together with the industry, in this case fish farms on ecological fish farms on land, then you create a whole small society or ecosystem that feeds each other, which is a super interesting project, I think.
Is there any other energy source that can do that?
No.
So that would be like a big advantage when it comes to geothermal?
It's a big advantage when it comes to geothermal, definitely.
Does people know about this?
No.
How come geothermal hasn't been able to get the place it deserves? Because...
Bullshit.
How many households in Sweden run on geothermal?
60%.
Exactly. So the question is, why hasn't it grown bigger globally?
Exactly.
Yeah. Because I think both technological development, especially when it comes to electricity production, but then, if you look at heating homes, for example, and using gas and oil and coal, it's been so cheap. And I think that for for many companies, they have, they are moving in the right direction. But if you go back 10, 15, 20 years, the sustainability was part of some companies and some governments' agenda, but not at all in the same way. So then, you used standardized technologies like if you compare it with the automotive industry, like the electrical car was developed already 100 years ago. Why didn't it take off? Well, it was so cheap with oil and gas that it made more sense back then to run on that instead of using electricity.
But is that then one of the boundaries or the hurdles to say for the industry of geothermal, that there are a lot of legislation and politics that actually doesn't support industry like this?
Yeah, but policy always lags behind. So I would say that is it's being developed. It takes a lot of time, but it usually does. So I would say that what we need is the industry to move forward and to combine both heating, cooling, and electricity production, and also build up these good examples of ecosystems where you can see very, very clear benefits from it. And I think that then when politicians and see what can be done, and that things can be done in a better way than using traditional technology, then the policies and the shifts will come as well.
So into our next segment then. What kind of uncomfortable conversations do we need to have when it comes to geothermal?
Risk.
Tell us about it.
No, but if you look at drilling, for example, then it's expensive. It's a lot of risk involved. It's always, you do a lot of geological research on the areas where you want to drill, but then you always have to drill to know for sure that you have the resource underneath your feet where you can produce electricity. It's easier with heat and cooling, but for electricity, it's a risk, and I think it's good to compare it to the oil and gas industry, because they have cracked that code. How do you go large scale, drill a lot of wells, but instead of looking for oil and gas, you're actually looking for hot rock and flow rates. And I think that's, if you just compare the two, I think it's quite stunning. Like last year, there were over 70,000 oil and gas wells drilled. There were less than 200 geothermal wells aimed for electricity production wells drilled.
How many, say that again? 200 versus?
70,000.
So we're still drilling oil rigs at that pace? Oh,
yes. So, and it's set to increase as well. So the projections is that will still go up. So if you look at it, we need also to be a catalyst and make the oil and gas industry see that you should be drilling for something else than oil and gas in order to do the energy transition.
Are we helping them to greenwash themselves? The oil industry?
No, I wouldn't say that we are doing that. I think that our ambition is to make them understand that they can use their competence that they have and the scale that they have and put it to a better use.
So utilizing their intellectual property is that the next step for the geothermal industry, to work closer with oil and gas?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. I think that the oil and gas industry need to play an important part in the transition, and I think that the geothermal world, of course, like if one oil and gas company drills 5,000 wells a year, the knowledge from drilling 5,000 wells is much more than if I drill 5 wells. So how can we learn how to drill wells for hot water in a better way that we can learn from the oil and gas industry. And the oil and gas industry can also understand that there's another power source out there that will be much more valuable than what they're taking up now in the future. And they have the resources to do it. So, I think it's a combination.
Definitely. What industries should look into geothermal and find the ecosystem together with them?
You mean what industries or what investors?
Both.
Well, I think from investors that are investing into the energy transition, I think all of them should pay close attention to geothermal and what is happening, and also to start investing there. Like you've seen in solar power and wind power, same there. 25 years ago, there were very few investors, but now there's everything from pension funds to VCs to private equity companies. They're all looking into solar and wind projects. So I want to see the same transition there, because if we have a lot of capital going into one specific sector, then technology will also develop faster. We will see new companies coming up. We will drive down cost, and we will speed up the deployment. And if you see industries, for example, I think, a lot of companies, they cannot run 100% on renewable energy, because if it's great that they put the solar panels on their industry rooftops, for example, but many of them run even during nighttime, and you can combine it with batteries. But then, if you're in a good area, then you can build a small geothermal power plant next to it, and then you will have 24/7 electricity. And you can also control it up and down, because it's a baseload power. So I think that from industries that are energy demanding and that want to convert from or want to generate their own electricity, then this is also a big opportunity in a lot of regions.
On a recent episode, we had Microsoft here, and they were telling us that they are aiming to become carbon negative, and actually to aim towards having a company that when you work with them, you actually make the world a better environment in a sense. And I know that Bill Gates also has a big interest in geothermal in a sense. Can you tell us a little bit more of the impact from the technology companies and people such as Bill Gates? What can they do for geothermal?
Well, I think if you take Microsoft as a company, excluding Bill Gates, they also have to do a lot, because all the data centers and everything that they are doing is also consuming a lot of electricity, right? So they have an important role in making sure that their own company can actually either be carbon neutral, or in this case then carbon negative. Which actually means that then they are start giving back and being part of the global solution in reducing CO2 emissions. And I think that not only Microsoft, but a lot of these large companies, they have to make the same bold statement, and then understand where are our energy consumers and how can we replace them from fossil fuels into renewable energy. And I think it's extremely important that you have companies like that taking on a leadership role, and saying this is what we want to do, because if you have them, others will follow, and they can also tell their sub-suppliers or partners that we will not work with companies if you are not carbon neutral or carbon negative, for example, and that drives a trend which will be very positive. Then if you take persons like Bill Gates, for example, he's as a person very important to drive both the shift in policy, to get politicians but also other investors to move in to this, not only geothermal but the full energy transition. And we're working a lot with Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which he founded. We were one of their first investments, and I think that what he have managed to do there is to gather a lot of the both high net worth people globally and in the US, but also get them to understand how important this is, and that they play an active role, and then build up and venture capital arm that invests in technology and platform companies, but also built up a coalition that drives then change within governments and countries.
Interesting. Is that a plead towards the greater public to get a tipping point? Do we need them to take a look at geothermal? Is that what we're asking?
Yeah, I think that they should definitely take a closer look at geothermal, and they already are through Breakthrough and with us. But I think that there's so much larger opportunity here, so it's important that we get more and more investors and people with the high profile like Bill Gates to lead the way.
Okay, so this one, I cannot let it go because you are one of the people one of the only persons I've ever heard of that actually stood up Bill Gates. Isn't that true?
Yeah, that's true.
Tell the story, please.
So we had, when Breakthrough Energy Ventures invested into Baseload Capital, I think we were company number 10 or 11 in their portfolio. And the year after, they were organizing a seminar and a one-on-one together with a bunch of the investors into Breakthrough Energy. So I received the date, and it was supposed to be in Florida on a nice hotel there and all security and what have you, and only 10 or 11 company CEOs though, together with everyone from Vinod Khosla to Bill Gates to Berkshire Hathaway and what have you. So a lot of very, very interesting
names,
people. Yeah. But it happened to be the same day as my second daughter was planned to be born. So
the choice was quite obvious where you were, where you were going to be.
So I had to choose a more important person at that time.
I think that your daughter would love to hear that story when she gets married one day.
She will hear it a lot.
Yeah.
Now it's time for conscious questions.
Tell us what you have done privately for the climate this week, or tell us what kind of stupid action you have seen out there done to the climate, or tell us about some kind of guilty pleasure you have when it comes to the climate.
Good question.
Which one do you pick?
Well, I think the second one. I think that people also needs to understand that we're far from having a solution to do the shift from fossil fuels to renewables, and but we need to work for it, and we need the oil and gas companies to start drilling for water instead of oil and gas.
So would that be the topic of your choice, or do you have another topic which is like something you burn for, which is something that you want to tell the world that, come on now, guys, change this?
No, but it's an obvious. Like it's the scales are so big, and we the technologies in order to produce a green baseload powers are out there. We just need to get things going, and instead of continue to use this outdated, old type traditional fossil fuels, we can use much better ones. So that's an obvious choice.
I agree with you. We usually have somewhere we send an extra sunshine, and my question for you is like, who do you want to elevate? Who do you want us to look at?
Sunshine.
Can I take two?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. No, but I think Bill Gates is one of them, of course. I think that he spends a lot of time, or most of his time, devoted into solving global macroeconomical problems. And I think he is plays a very big important role in not only the energy transition but also in a lot of other aspects. So I think that's one very important person. And but if you take it from the other side, I think everyday people should also have sunshine, because if you just look at how people have started to recycle. You know, when I speak with with people in their 15, 16, 17-year-old, if I look back at myself, I wasn't close to as aware like they are today. So I think that we should also give sunshine to everyday people for doing small, very important steps and creating the awareness that we need to change something. We cannot go on as we have.
You heard it. It's you he is giving sunshine to, because you are important to be able to make the switch. With that said, Alexander, I think that we are ending on a very positive note. And thank you very much for being here and for continuously to fiercely challenge and make sure that we bring back the balance to the planet.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Well, as you understand, this episode was actually quite emotional for me, because this is something that I truly believe can be the last puzzle of the piece. We do need to have many options in order to solve the situation and to have things that make us able to do the switch. Geothermal is definitely one of the untapped potentials that can be utilized. There is not only what it can actually give you, like electricity, but it can also give us the ecosystem that we need. And interesting enough, there is already solutions. We're already out there. You heard it, 60% of the Swedish households already have access to it. So it's not about how, it's about when. So my suggestion is to look into it and start investing in it. Thank you for today. It's been a pleasure, and I so much look forward to seeing you again next week. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and also to give us your thumbs up. Please share this with a friend or maybe on your social media so that we can have a bigger audience to help us make the switch. Have a good week.